Welcome back to the Bring Your Big Energy podcast. I have Carrie Severson on the call with me today. Hi, Carrie.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so pumped to have you joining us. Today's guest, as I said, is Carrie Severson. Carrie is a keynote speaker, author, recovering caregiver, and the host of the podcast called I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes. Carrie's life has been shaped by multiple what we call intensity points, as you all know, here on the show. As an entrepreneur, a high achiever, and most profoundly as a caregiver, advocating for her husband through his cancer journey. So along the way, she experienced burnout more than once, quite frankly, and we know how that goes. And instead of shrinking or powering through, she really chose to listen, rebuild, and evolve. So, through deep research into the nervous system, energy management, and cognitive reframing, Carrie really discovered a powerful truth that recovery isn't about doing more, it's about remembering that you already are enough. So she's the author of the Enoughness method, which is all about reclaiming your power, worth, and peace after burnout, and Unapologetically Enough, which is a guided journal designed to help caregivers and high capacity humans restore their energy without losing themselves. So today, Carrie's mission is to really bridge that gap between the healthcare support for caregivers, normalize burnout, and help people rise into a fuller, more grounded, more authentic version of who they're meant to be. So this conversation is really for all you caregivers out there, all you partners, all you leaders, and anyone that's standing at their intensity point, ready to transform burnout into clarity, connection, and big energy. All right, Carrie, did I miss anything that you would like me to share?
But that's amazing. I love it. Yeah, recovering burnout. Sometimes I'll say recovered. Mostly though, it's just recovering because I feel like burnout is a really slippery slope. And what came to me as you were reading it is there are so many people who are considered caregivers, but wouldn't identify as a caregiver.
Mm,
But based on research, there's like 62 million family caregivers out here. And you don't necessarily know you are one until you've gone through something and you look back and you're like, "Oh, I did that." So, yeah,
that's
I
so
wanted
good.
to
Yeah, how do you define it? Let's start there. How do you
Yeah.
define a caregiver then?
Family caregivers are people who have to prioritize somebody else's life over theirs a lot of times. They're unpaid. They have 9 to 5 and 5 to 9s. So it's people who are driving across town after their full-time work to check in with somebody, to take someone to the doctor, to go grocery shopping, to do some light cleaning at a home that is not necessarily theirs, or bringing somebody else into their home environment to manage medicine for, doctor's appointments for, all those things for. So caregivers are really the backbone for somebody else to consistently move forward with their own life.
That's so good. Yeah, there's probably so many listeners that are like, "All right, I'm gonna tune out on today's episode. It's not my thing." And then they're going, "Wait a second. I am doing so many of those things." So, I mean, even just as a mom, I feel like the hats I wear as
For sure.
caregiver all day, every day.
Parents of special need kids, of kids on the spectrum, things like that, you don't really think of that. There's so many more complexities today in just everyday life that burnout is a massive issue at the forefront. The forefront. So I love this conversation. I'm all about big energy, but recovering burnout for sure.
Yes, yes. I do. I feel like burnout, sometimes you don't know it's happening until you're so far into it, right?
Yeah,
It's like we don't hear the whispers. And we're definitely going to get into that conversation today because I love that you have so many tools. I think the best makers of tools are people who've needed the tools the most and invented the tools. And they now are using those tools to help other people. And in my own, as you know, I use the Spark process, which is sort of what we use for the backbone of today's conversation. But that was completely born out of like, I can't find what I
necessity.
need. Yes, absolutely.
Every step, I feel like that's trailblazers in general. First of all, like born entrepreneurs, that's kind of what we do. But burnout, I first burned out in 2012 before burnout was a buzzword. The only
Yes.
person talking about burnout back then was Ariana Huffington. So I and, and I didn't know she was talking about burnout until I was on the very like edge of recovery. And I was able to kind of look back and be like, "Oh, this is what I just went through." I'm going to put a name to it. But I had to piecemeal my own recovery process back then. And I started by really reaching my breaking point, incredibly unhappy, 50 pounds heavier, so tired, bone tired. And my nervous system was a rat running a race that I couldn't stop. I couldn't be still. I had to like force myself to sit on my hands and stare at the sky and just breathe. Incredibly uncomfortable to be not doing anything. But yeah, I spent like 18 months figuring out how to find myself again. And this was again back in like 2012, 2013, doing really slow movements, finding things that made me happy again, pulling myself out of the center of my work so that I could breathe again. But I had to figure it out myself. So moving forward, 5, 6 years later, given the opportunity to help others move through that process, sharing my burnout experience led to me writing my first book.
Okay.
And then, the rest is history, just sort of following the path in front of me.
Well, so yes, and I would love viewers. I know that we've met, and so I've had the honor of hearing parts of your story. But tell the listeners a little bit about you. Kind of had talk about these two occurrences of burnout, right? So the 2012, and then when you're a caregiver. I guess just to back up to 2012, what led you into that place, and then you kind of build these tools, and then I think let's get into that second kind of burnout.
Sure. So I've always been somebody who's been creative. I've always felt the need to do personal expression somehow, some way. And I created a nonprofit for girls back in 2011
Okay.
called Severson Sisters, and it blew up nationally pretty much overnight, literally. Was sitting behind my desk watching a White House Facebook Live with the First Lady and MTV and Facebook. And it was her platform at the time was stopbullying.gov. And as that was happening, my phone was going up the hook. Like ABC and NBC and CBS were all calling at the same time, and emails were flooding my inbox at the same time. And my one little person nonprofit was catapulted, and I had to keep up a demand that I did not know how to sustain. So
Wow.
I built this national brand and burned out really hard as a result, and kept it going for about 8 years. And then I burnt out pretty much immediately. Burnout is this, we now look at it as prolonged exposure to unmanaged chronic stress. It's a nervous system issue. And I didn't know it at the time, but like working 18 hours, as an entrepreneur, you look at it that like a badge of honor, or doing all the things and all
Yeah.
the lists and stuff. But like 100%, burnout changed my life, probably ruined my life at that time. And I had to figure, my way out of it.
Yeah.
It's a very slippery slope because as problem solvers, we want to take action. We want to move things forward. We know we can get stuff done. And so it's this very thin line of like doing too much, not doing too much, and then taking care of ourselves. So I felt like I was in a pretty good space doing my zone of genius, sharing what I knew about burnout recovery with the masses. I had books out in the market. I was on stage leading keynotes and seminars to busy professionals experiencing it. And my first book came out in 2022 when burnout was a buzzword.
Okay.
And my book landed on the desks of HR executives and in subscription boxes. And pretty soon I was being asked to come help employees figure this out too. And I'm working with Target, and I'm working with, American Healthcare Association. And then my husband wakes up October 28th, 2023 with this lump on his neck, and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. And December 1st, he's diagnosed with head and neck cancer, and there's this tumor cluster cascading down his neck.
Wow.
It looks like grapevine, and it had spread to the other side. It's all throughout his lymph nodes. Yeah, and my life changed again overnight. High
Right.
intensity point, right? Like by February 26th, 2024, almost 3 months later, I was filing complaints against the hospital, kicking medical professionals off his team, demanding he be checked into the long care, demanding he be checked into the hospital because he's dying. And I can tell he's dying, fighting a healthcare system that is not really designed for those who don't know how to navigate it, right?
Right.
I mean, burnout, I knew I was in burnout. The difference between entrepreneurship burnout and caregiving burnout is literally somebody's life.
Right.
And so if I didn't fight, if I didn't move, if I didn't, you know, stay up all night making sure he was alive, nobody else was going to. And so burnout happened pretty quickly for me there. And coming out of caregiving burnout, so much harder than entrepreneurship burnout. But
So
that
what does
was, yeah,
burnout look like then for you? Because if you're caregiving him, but then you also are going through this simultaneously, you're burning out. Like, what does that look like for you on that journey at that point?
for me, number one thing is inflammation. Physically, it's inflammation in my body. I could show you pictures. I literally put on 4 dress sizes in a matter of 2 months.
Mm,
The heaviest, the biggest I'd ever been. My body was literally expanding to, and I look at that as with so many different places or concepts. The idea that I was taking up space, I was getting louder,
mm,
I was holding more energy, but I was also living on cheeseburgers from the hospital cafeteria
right.
because we were at the hospital sometimes for 10 hours a day.
And your cortisol levels were probably so high too. We just
Through
had
the roof.
a hormone specialist on the show. It'll air soon, but she would talked a lot about how much cortisol and stress is related to the levels of inflammation and estrogen and
For sure.
all of the things in your body, your nervous system, and you feel like you're in fight or flight, and you are in
Constantly.
that moment. You're
Yep.
fighting for your husband's life, which is so important and so crucial, and it's to hold something that big. And so
Yeah.
how do you okay, so walk us through how that process looks then, and then how you start to heal on the other side of that.
So I knew, physically I'm expanded from a nervous system perspective. It is constantly in sympathetic. I can't slow down. My thoughts won't stop. I can't take a deep breath. And that for me, another thing, your breath work is so related to your nervous system. In my chiropractic office, there's literally a sign, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Parasympathetic is the state of relaxation. It is a state of being out of fight or flight. And our internal organs are 100%. You can shift our body internally, externally from parasympathetic into sympathetic and vice versa, all through our breath. And when I'm in burnout, I'm having really shallow, I can't get my breath past my sternum. I can't get it down into my rib cage. I can't expand my chest. It's definitely not in my belly. All of my body is tense. I'm like high in my sit bones. So for me, there's this, I can tell physically, but then when I go deeper, I can't take a deep exhale. I can't relax into a chair. Not sleeping. Again, my thoughts are running 1,000 miles a minute. So some things that in my research of recovery and coming out the first time, things that I knew to do were things I had to search for. For example, visualization is a great modality to use.
Mhm.
It helps you become incredibly present, very still, very internal. You're focusing on a single point, which allows your brain to stop and to calm down and to settle. So you're able to go into parasympathetic. You're able to get deeper into your body. Wanted to visualize a focal point while sitting on the hospital floor waiting for my husband to get out of radiation or chemotherapy, but I couldn't find anything soothing. So I would pull up pictures of vacation spots I wanted to go to, take a picture of it, put it down on the floor, and stare at it for 30 minutes. And I had to kind of create my own way again. That was the very first step for me. And I wouldn't say recovering, I would say managing. I feel like
Manage.
there's probably that first step of recognizing you're in it. When you can't stop, it's a moment by moment journey, right?
Right.
So managing it is that first step. And visualization was a huge thing for me in the hospital, on the floor, crisscross applesauce. I'm stretching my body to kind of get more air in my body, to move it, feel a little bit more comfortable in my body. But then I'm visualizing being on the beach somewhere.
So how long does it take for that to work for you?
There were days where it definitely, while, the really hot times where My husband was having panic attacks in the radiation machine and had to be sedated. And I'd be waiting for hours for him for a 30-minute procedure. When I had more time, there were days where I'm able to say it worked pretty quickly because I knew he was in somebody else's care. I didn't have to be on. I could allow myself to lean back into it. But on days where I had to move him from one appointment to another appointment to, getting his blood drawn or an infusion, it's almost like I didn't allow myself to settle. Like I felt like I had to stay high, I had to stay at alert. So there were some days I didn't even bother, but that's in a very high stress. Not everyone experiences that, right?
Right.
When you're able to use your tools that you find, they work pretty quickly, to be honest,
Yeah. And don't you feel like we all have different levels of capacity of what we can.
for sure.
Yeah, it's like I remember when I was going through my own personal cancer journey, like if I look back now, I'm like, who was that did all that? Like I don't even there's no way I could do all that now and survive all the awful things I survived, but like my capacity I think at that point was just so high that I was just going to make it happen because you
Hmm.
just needed to make it happen and you have to be
Yep.
strong.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I especially imagine you're feeling that way too as a caregiver, right? You have to be strong. Like you said, it's a matter of advocating
Yeah.
for life or death. And so take us back to the intensity point where you start to become this caregiver. And so maybe you haven't even defined yourself as that yet. But what starts shifting inside you as you begin advocating? Because I know you had to do a lot of
Yeah.
advocacy work. What starts to shift inside you as you begin that advocation?
I actually created an alter ego.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because I had never done that before. I mean, I've taken care of people, but I never gotten into the face of somebody to be like, no, this is what's happening. You know? Um, so I tuned into it in a very different way than I ever had before. I did some spiritual work and I called in all kinds of big energy to go back to your point here.
Love that.
I hail from Viking people, and so I was like, "All those Viking queens, come back here." And I allowed myself to get loud. I allowed myself to get sharp, which is a tone in my voice I hadn't really accessed before. And sharp is a really good. I've thought about it for a long time. I'm really good at being vulnerable. I've been a professional writer for 30 years. I'm really good at being raw. I'm very comfortable being public with my story, but I was sharp with people. I was demanding. I was deliberately unapologetic is something that I've learned how to do in recovery of like owning my story and being vocal about what I need, but being sharp with people about what I needed to happen for my loved one whose rights were being violated in the hospital. My husband fell through a lot of cracks at a very reputable hospital. We were given like an apology letter, an official apology letter from the hospital about like he was double dose Benadryl during chemotherapy, considered an overdose patient as a result, and not he was non-responsive.
My gosh.
Yeah, it was one thing after another. So learning how to advocate, being vocal, being big, being sharp, those were new things for me.
Yeah.
Even as a storyteller and someone who is comfortable in my voice, allowing it to be more demanding was an interesting experience, an experiment. And I liked it, actually. It was like, when it was all said and done, I was like, I'm really good at being Glinda, the pink good witch,
Yeah.
but I allowed myself to be Elphaba for a little bit. And I was like, we're going to keep her for a while.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you. Did you name this alter ego, and
Hmm.
were you able to go in and out of her?
Yeah. So I just called her the Viking Queen.
Love that.
And when I got really angry, I was like, and I'm going to let her rampage. I'm going to let her. And I did. It was like a fiery voice where I'm like standing outside my husband's hospital. When he finally got admitted to the long-term cancer wing, his white blood cell count was 0.02. His body was really close to shutting down. And there was one medical professional who sent us home before I demanded he get checked into the hospital. And when we got checked in and I learned of it, his white blood cell count, I walked right over to patient advocate and I was like, she's off his team. She doesn't get to come back and see him. I don't want her anywhere around him. And I stood outside his hospital door, just to make sure that he was actually given proper care. Anyway, yeah. Viking Queen.
Viking queen, and I love that she can serve you, and then you also can now work through and manage and be able to be like, "Okay, today I don't need to put on the
Yeah.
Viking." I don't know, what do they wear on their head? That
Yeah.
a big thing. What do you feel like in terms of or just to kinda round us up for, like, the reflection pieces, what do you if you reflect back, what do you think was most misunderstood about you as a caregiver or in general that people is a misunderstanding that people have about caregivers, especially when you're married to the person you're caring for?
Yeah. Well, there's so much actually. I find that people who have never walked through it look at it as something like, oh, just drop him off at the hospital. Let him figure it out on his own. I'm simply a form of transportation or somebody behind the scenes that's planning calendars and stuff. I was really surprised to be told by people in the hospital that a lot of patients actually didn't have someone like me, didn't have somebody there day in and day out. And the people around me, I was surprised by them as well, that they would assume I wouldn't be as involved in his treatment plan as I was. He was on fentanyl, oxy, gabapentin, and by the time he got into the hospital, he was on a drip system that was 10 times more potent than morphine. He was literally unavailable for communication, I'd say 90% of the day. How he could have possibly managed any of it by himself, particularly there were days where I was like wheeling him around the hospital. So
Yes.
if you've never walked this experience, caregiving is not a thing that you can kind of check out of. It
Yeah.
is something that overruns your life, which is why burnout is so high in that field, in that space, and why the divorce rate between spouses, patient and caregiver is so high, because this changes a dynamic in a relationship. It changes the individuals, and then it obviously changes the relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as you start to move through and he starts on his healing journey, so when do you start to realize that survival mode is no longer serving you, and what was your body trying to tell you?
Let's see. So actually, so the very first day he's done with treatment, we don't have to go back to the hospital. I'm sitting here. This is, my workspace, but at the time I was, barely working. He's on the opposite side. There's this big island here. He's on the opposite side of the island. And he's like, I feel like I've been a dog on a chain. And keep in mind, he's barely audible. I can understand him. And like I said, he was not conscious the majority of the day, but he's like, I feel like we need to go on vacation. I need freedom. I'm looking at him and I'm like,
Deep breath, deep breaths.
I don't care if we ever leave this house again. I'm not going anywhere. There's no way. So we were on parallel paths based
Yeah.
on having two very different experiences based on the same circumstance.
Yes.
When healing begins, it's very obvious we're on two very different paths going in different directions. Again, which is why I think the divorce rate is so high. But
Well, wait, real quick on that. That's so important. So, what do you think was going on that was making him be in so far direction and you be so far direction? What do you think was driving each of yours place you were in?
I mean, he felt like he was completely restricted and he had lost his humanity. He had lost his purpose. He had lost his will, right? And he'd been controlled by this disease and he needed to try to take his life back. Where I felt like the disease had definitely controlled my life as well. I wanted to take my life back as well, but I needed to cut ties with having to manage his life. And so I knew, I was like, I've got nothing left to give. I'm at the end of the rope here. Need to move out of survival. And it's time for me. It's my turn. I get to work on me. Yeah, that was a point of conflict actually for us for several weeks, which is where this whole concept of I saved you, now do the dishes actually came from, because
Yes, tell us about that.
we were legit in this argument where I'm like, you have a feeding tube. I have to hand feed you every 3 hours around the clock. I've got fentanyl patches, I've got oxy, I've got gabapentin in the fridge. I don't even know if it's legal to drive with an open bottle of oxy. I'm like, I'm not driving you to the beach because it's me, all me. And then having to somehow figure out how to feed you with syringes on the side of the road. No,
Yeah.
I'm not
Doesn't
doing
sound like
this.
a tropical vacation, does it?
No, it wasn't, it wouldn't have been a vacation for me. it would have been a vacation for him, but not really because his, the trauma would have obviously came with us.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I need you to step back into our life. I need you to come back into our reality. I've done my job to save your life. I need you to start doing the dishes. So it was a legitimate conversation. And then I went into our bedroom and I sat down on the floor and I let myself have all the feelings. And he did the dishes that night.
And what were those feelings as he's doing the dishes and you're in that moment on the floor? What are those feelings?
I mean, first one, I'm just going to be real. It was like guilt. I can't believe my husband, who's like gone through this experience. And then I put this layer on him of, you know, I felt really bad at first because even though I was speaking my truth and I was being real about it, it wasn't my immediate, oh, thank you for being there for me. My first response was, he's barely alive.
Yeah.
He's barely vertical. He's got to be in a ton of pain. He still is in pain. Like he was in pain, and the pain would escalate for several months after that. So my first reaction was, oh, I'm putting a lot of stuff on him. It's not his job to, just like it wasn't my job anymore to help him heal. He had to do it for himself. It's not his job to take on my stuff. So I owned it and I was like, you know what? I don't mean to put this on you. Thank you for doing the dishes. And then, you know what? Over the next several months, like we continued to have conversations about it and figure out what he needed on his path and what I needed on my path. And when he was able to get behind the wheel again and he was on, he eliminated the painkillers from his life, he took himself on a vacation.
So he was empowered then. And it is so interesting too, and having so again, I'm a mom caregiver, but I have not had to be the caregiver. I've been the recipient twice with my cancer journey with my husband, who I'm very blessed to have. First time did not go well. I'm just put it out there. Speaking of like just wow, that was really hard. We didn't show up well there. Second time, amazing. But I will say it was much more aggressive the second time. I had double mastectomy, all this different stuff. So you had to have someone. I couldn't lift a thing of milk,
Yeah.
and so you know how hard that the journey is. And it's very frustrating as the person that never wants to ask for help, to get help from other people. Number one, I'm super bad at that. But then once I eased into it and realized I needed it, I couldn't survive without the help, then it was such a role shift that everything became him. And so these two parents became one person because in this couple that used to show up and do all these different, we're huge volunteers and we do all that, we're a very, very big energy family. But at the end of the day, like he was the one that had to do the carpool. He was the one that had to do the meals. He was the one that had to take care of me and on and on and on. And so I remember when it was coming back to time when I could start to do things, I remember being a little bit frustrated. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm still sore or whatever. But I do think it's like, how long can the caregiver be like, I can't do this forever, though, right? There's not a sustainability around becoming one person almost like. And so I've seen the push and pull of that. And so how do you feel like you guys ended up, because he does the dishes, you sit in the room, you
Yeah.
have a good moment in your
Yeah.
feelings, and then you make it to the other side. And so what does that look like next?
Yeah, I mean, I got myself into therapy. I started
Great.
processing my stuff. We had honest conversations about where I wanted to go with my work and how I was going to use what I had just come through as his caregiver with the bubble that I am witnessing with caregiving in general, where it's a big, it's a federal issue, it's a state issue. There's a lot of conversations. I got plugged into groups where I could share what I had gone through as a storyteller and as a caregiver. He started a pickleball group. He got involved, created community for himself. He started to own his own stuff, and so we had separate lives in terms of like our hobbies and plugging into areas that were good for our overall well-being and mental health. And then made sure that we were coming together in terms of we took a vacation together July of 2024, like a long 3-week vacation, just him and me reconnecting, and we make that a priority. So yeah, we've done the work internally, we've done the work individually, and then we consistently choose us and come back and make sure that we're clear communication, send some things off with me. I'll send some things off with him. We're constantly checking, you know, how are you doing? We're always in communication about how we're feeling and
That's so good. And it's so I love what you said around individually we have to do the inside work and
yeah,
then as a couple we need to do the work as well because I do think you have these big beautiful separate lives and together lives before something like this happens. And then when it happens you're kind of smushed together all the time and there's a power dynamic and a whether it's good or bad, it just ends up happening because someone really needs to be there for the other person and the other person can't contribute how they used to. And so I love this kind of this like I'm getting a visual of it's kind of pulling apart a little again in a healthy way. And so you have each other, but you also have these independent lives, which I think are so important. I absolutely agree with that. So when
yeah.
you
Thank you.
yes, it's so beautiful. So when you talk about burnout being more than just exhaustion, I know that you've done a lot of stuff on the nervous system and a lot of research. How did learning about the nervous system change everything for you?
Yeah. Well, understanding that it's controllable
Okay.
was a big eye opener
Yes.
that like it doesn't run me, I can run it. So the second I start to feel a little prickly, anxious, again, I can't get my breath down into my belly. That's a really big one for me. I'll be like, what am I what's the big voice? What am I letting run my mind? What am I letting rule and run my nervous system? And where is my pedometer? Like what was it pointing to? Parasympathetic or sympathetic? Sympathetic is fight or flight. We're in the rat race. We can't turn it off. Sympathetic is the point of relaxation. Understanding that it is a cellular thing that we can change it and we can change it in a moment. We can stop, plant our feet, take a deep breath, hold it, exhale slowly, and it immediately turns off. So when I'm working with big groups, particularly in high stress environment, healthcare is a great one. First responders, another, obviously. I'm like, you don't have to spend hours a day in this work. It's literally I like to look at it as microdosing through transitions. So it's like
Ooh, say that again.
microdosing through transitions.
Okay, tell us about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to manipulate your nervous system. Manipulating your breath is the first one, but singing, you want to engage your vagus nerve. So anything you can do to vibrate your vagus nerve, singing, humming, sighing, making a really big, like that sigh sound that you make in yoga where you're like,
Yes.
get a room kind of
Yeah.
situation. All of those things trick our brain into telling our body that we're safe. And that's when parasympathetic is on and sympathetic is off. So you're walking down the hallway. I encourage people to sing happy birthday to themselves or whatever lullaby comes to mind, but happy birthday is always in the back because usually it engages like a smile and you're feeling a celebration. And box breathing is a breathing technique that is used by the Navy SEALs. Humming is a really big one. Sighing with sound, a really big one. But you can do it at red lights. You can do it walking down the hallway. You can do it before a meeting, after a meeting, before you walk into a door. You walk through a doorway. We're looking at like 15, 20, 30, 60 seconds at a time.
That is such a gift, I think, for me, even if it's an audience of one, but really for the listeners too, because I remember when someone one time we were talking about like mind control and like meditation, like, so just start meditating 20 minutes a day. I was like, girl,
Who
what
has
are
time?
you planet are you actually from right now that I am like running this huge team at Google? I've got 3 kids. Like, what are you even talking about meditating 20 minutes a day? And so I love this offer for the audience of micro dosing. And
Yeah.
all of those things you said they're fun too. Like
Yeah.
who doesn't wanna like, mine would be Taylor Swift. You're saying a lullaby. I'm like, the anything Taylor Swift is always in my head, like, rent-free for sure. But anyway, and so I think this opportunity for everyone to microdose through transitions is such a beautiful offering because it's easy, you can do it, you can check yourself, "Can I pause? Can I take a breath? Can I sing? And can I reset?" Right? And then be able to work through whatever that tough thing is that you're working through.
Yeah. I love it. I've been doing it for, it's what, December. I've been doing that for about a year and a half pretty consistently on a regular basis. And so I wake up with songs in my head. First thing I'm doing as, like haven't even turned on the lights and I have music in my head. And so I'm humming and I'm singing right away. My number one like nervous system reset tip is, I mean, all those things are great, but I love cold therapy.
Okay.
So it's really hard to jump in a cold shower in the middle of the day. So I have an ice roller in my freezer that I'll get out while I'm like usually in between Zoom meetings or I'm making coffee or tea or something or filling up my water glass. I'll run a cold roller on my neck. And the
Okay.
second I feel my belly soften and I can feel myself exhale, I know that I've shifted.
So what is the science behind that, do you think, the cold therapy?
It's a boomerang system where it actually shocks our nervous system out of fight or flight into parasympathetic. And we're not talking like, you know, you're chipping away ice. We're looking at like jumping in the ocean when it's 65 degrees. I mean, like that shocks your system. But yeah, and not for long.
Yeah?
30 seconds to start is good. I have been doing it for so long now that it like sucks my breath out of my body at first. And then I start to laugh. I'll scream. I'll kind of get some. And my husband will be somewhere else in the house and he knows I'm doing a cold shower because of the noises I'm making.
That is great. I'm feeling so much joy coming out of your heart. And I like it because you're almost immediately turning something that is very stressful into like, how can I make this fun? And it's again, it's like a polar opposite of the reaction you're having in that moment. Okay, so I think the other thing, and that's even part of my spark process is for results. And I think we as humans are so attached to results. How do we know we're doing better? How do we know we're healed? How do we know we're a great caregiver? How do I know I'm a great writer? Whatever it is. So you teach the concept of enoughness. And how did redefining that word change how you showed up for yourself?
Well, so it started back in like 2013 when I first burned out, I'm a writer. So I went back to my journals and I was like, how did I get here? How did this happen? And I started highlighting words that I saw in my journal. And I saw the word enough all the time. It was never enough. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough volunteers. I didn't have enough hours. And I was like, this word's a bad word. I have to stop using this word. So I went like a full probably 5 or 6 years looking at the word enough as a four-letter word, completely removed it from my vocabulary. And when I started doing the internal work to really heal and started playing with what does that word mean? It's a fantastic word. It's a abundant word. It's a substantial word. And so I started flipping it around and looking at where am I playing big enough? Where am I showing up enough as and how do I feel enough today? And really looking at it as a positive affirmation and a positive reflection. And I kept coming back to this concept of I did all of this. Look at what I built. Look at what I did. Look at what I came through. Look at what I succeeded at. Look at what I recovered from. Look at what I'm doing today. Look at how I took this really big thing, flipped it around, and am teaching others how to walk this walk, you know? And so, yeah, the concept of enoughness really is being self-reflective of how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what I've come through, what I'm sharing, how I'm showing up, accepting that however I show up today, if I'm making a good positive impact in the world is my contribution and that is enough. Positive contributions are really big for me. And, I love the idea that you have a big energy family. That's something I've never really looked at and played with, but that's what we do too. Like we show up big for each other. We show up big for our community. But that's really what the enoughness method was. It was, where am I showing up enough as? How am I being self-reflective and being kind with myself, being patient with myself, being graceful with myself. And that included the little microdosing nervous system techniques that I had built, the allowing myself to take a moment to breathe, allowing myself to go outside and get the sun on my face for a couple of minutes a day, allowing myself to pause because that's healthy. Where when you're in burnout or you're an entrepreneur or you're running big business or big groups, we're sort of programmed and almost expected to never stop, never pause. Don't take lunch breaks. Those are bad. Don't take bathroom breaks. Are you kidding? That's what your home life is for.
Right. I'm laughing because now that I own my own business and I am an entrepreneur, I'm the hardest boss I've ever had. Like my friends like, "So, do you just like read a book at lunch hour?" I'm like, "What's lunch hour?" I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
I don't know that I ate yesterday." And it is it can come so quickly. Like you said, it's a very slippery slope.
Yep.
Got to be paying attention to the whispers along the
Yeah.
way. Absolutely. Okay, so this is what I want to ask you too. So excuse me, I think about, like, versions, and I know that we talked about this prior, and I loved your thoughts on this, so I wanna make sure the listeners also benefit from it. So, I remember the first time I had cancer, my mom's also a breast cancer survivor, shout out to Mama Teresa, Mother Teresa over there, and I remember saying, like, "When I come out of the other side of this, I just can't wait to be back to my old self," and I just that's what I was clinging to, that old self that ran the marathon, did all the things, right? Whatever it was. And I remember her looking at me and just saying, "Hey, babe, here's the thing. You're never gonna be your old self again. And that's okay. You're an entirely different you will be an entirely different version of you, though." And I remember being, like, so mad about that at the time. Not mad at her, just mad at that was the reality. I knew she was right, but I just had so much anger toward it. And then the second time around, my husband said something about, like, "Well, now you're bionic, right? Because I got these fake boobs and all this stuff." He's like, "Well, now you're just bionic. You've been through you kicked its butt twice." And I was like, "Yes, that is so right, bro." I'm like, "I am gonna own that new version of myself." And so I love my new version of myself. Like, if I left the world tomorrow, I do not have a single regret on what I am doing and building and how I'm showing up for my people and myself. I get so passionate about it. But what did the version of yourself look like before and after? And what can you teach us about that?
Let's see. Yeah, I actually look at pictures where of myself and I'm like, "Oh, this is when I was X, Y, and Z and I looked great, but internally I was not."
Oh.
Or yeah, it's so fascinating. First of all, I have to say my mom is Teresa too, so my husband calls her Mother Teresa.
Oh, that's great. Shout out Mama T's.
Yeah,
I
I love
love
it.
that.
Um, yeah, so I've always had this drive that I had to prove myself. I had to And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it's a firstborn thing or if it's an entrepreneur thing or what, but my first business, when I burned out for the first time, I looked at burnout as a failure because I was like, I should be able to handle this. I should be able to grow this national brand and keep it going and not need to break. But burnout it was definitely a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The new version came out where I was like, I deserve to find peace and happiness, and I can't survive if I don't survive, the organization doesn't survive. And I need to separate myself from it. It is not my identity. I can't wear it like a skin anymore. I need to separate. And when I did that, we went from a B to C company to a B to B, where I was like training facilitators on how to lead our program around the country. And I had much more freedom. And I was happy. I started shifting. I started living again, and I felt more space. And there was this internal process that was happening where I felt like I'd let somebody else down. I had because I wasn't showing up in the front and I wasn't everywhere and I wasn't, you know, I was saying no to things. This no longer can be a 12-hour day, 7-day a week thing. I don't want the news van outside my front door because something happened on Capitol Hill and I'm the person that they're going to get a 15-second soundbite from. I started saying no to stuff.
Mm,
And that was probably the beginning of a literal new version of my purpose, what I was being drawn to next. And it was probably a matter of, I'd say 3 years. I met my husband. I felt called to move out of the nonprofit space and into something different and started playing much more balanced. Yeah. So there's been plenty of versions of myself out there. But
yeah.
the big shift really was saying no to things that kept me in a heightened state for the look of it and allowing myself to be internally happy, peaceful, balanced. Because if I was in that place, everything I was doing was big, was successful, was purposeful, was in alignment. I learned how to be in an alignment when I was saying no to things that didn't feel good anymore.
Well, and how do you filter that out? Because I mean, you're saying like NBC, ABC, Capitol Hill, like all these amazing, like cool things that probably when they first started happening, you're like, is this my life? This is
I
amazing.
couldn't say no, right? Like, oh, I had to say yes to
Yeah,
everything.
exactly. Cause almost like celebrity status instantly. And so, but then eventually you come to this place in your story where you're like, I'm going to say no to protect and align. How do, and for our listeners, like, how do you say no? It's a very simple question, but how do you say no?
Well, first, let me say what happens when you don't. When
Okay.
you don't say no, you will break. You will get to a point where you are at the bottom and you have no other choice. Because when we are this internal nudge, this whispering that you keep talking about, that is our guidance system. That's our soul. That's our spirit. That's our guiding light, right? Trying to speak to us. And when we ignore it, it's going to start to get louder to the point of breaking us, whether that be a really bad flu, we lose a client, a door shut. Yeah. So how do we say no? We say no to things. First of all, when you get an opportunity, my suggestion always is to take a pause, take a deep breath. Where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your heart? Does it light you up? Is it exciting? Does it give you tingles? That's a yes. That's a whole body yes. Do you feel it in your gut? Do you hesitant? Do you squint your face? Do you like not really want to respond right away? That's a no. Let
Yes.
it go. Trust that something better is coming because we'll find opportunities when we are in alignment. We're saying yes to the things that light us up. We're telling the universe and all the powers that be, this is where I want to go. This is where I know you're opening doors for me. You're putting me at the right tables. You're bringing me more alignment. And I'm going to trust that this is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm going to follow this. And everything else will start to fall away. That's just the law of the universe.
It's so fascinating that you say this. Where do you feel it in your body? Because as a coach, I ask this question all the time. And it's for many people, it's the first time they've ever even heard the question or associated with an emotional, logical, rational kind of fight in your head with your physiological universe. Like most people, and me neither, probably before I was a coach, don't put the two together. So I love this notion of like, where do you feel it in your body? Or I'll often be like, okay, if you don't take the opportunity, what is the feeling or emotion that gives you? Or if you do take it, what's it give you? And a lot of times they're like, I'm just really relieved I didn't take it. I feel relief that I didn't take it. And I'm like, well, then that's your answer. So that's so good. Okay, so Carrie, so what is the work you're doing now? What are you up to? How are you helping people? What's your world right now?
So I do a lot in the keynote speaking space. I love getting in front of people and helping them manage their day to day in professional environments. I do a lot of seminars and half day workshops in that space.
Beautiful.
Did as a storyteller, I work with a lot of people on helping them share their story and putting that out into the world, however that looks. If it's a book, if it's um helping you get on stage and keynote speaking. So I have these two sort of parallel things where I am using the tools I learned over the years recovering from burnout. My narrative is a as a caregiver, and I am following that and putting that into the world. I did write a book myself. I Saved You Now Do the Dishes, and so I am currently looking for a literary agent to help me get that out.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then I have this other hat where, I'm a trained professional writer, and people come to me and ask for help putting their work out into the world and promoting themselves as storytellers. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. When I first started thinking about lives like yours and I's, because I think we have a lot of similarities in these spaces. I used to say it was like a patchwork quilt, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it sounds like you're sort of filtering through what feels like is right and aligned for you.
Yes.
And that's where you're called to serve.
Yep.
And then those are the places that you put your energy into versus what might be the shiny thing or so it's like the skill plus capability plus passion piece, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think so many people are like really trying to find where they should put their energy, where they should put their passion. So, what any key advices that you would give people on that if whoever's listening today?
Passion is a leading, it's great, but I love that you're passionate about something. Finding a space, the skill where it can meet demand, finding the gap has always been my special sauce, where it's like I can take my skill, I can take what I know, um, I can do for others, and I can fill this need in here. And when you find that, Hopefully it is something you're passionate about. Just start putting it out. Don't worry about, the funnels and the websites. Just start speaking truth to it. And when it's aligned, things will start to come forward.
It's so true. That was the best advice my publisher gave me was like, "Just write the shitty first draft. Just
Yeah.
write it." And it was like, "Oh, wait, it doesn't have to be perfect? It doesn't even have to go in order because books are built, not written." Like, I didn't even know any of that. And so that was just it gives freedom. So for anyone that's, like, wondering or feeling called to try something that matches their skills with passion, like that middle of that Venn diagram, like, just take the first step and try some stuff. And it might be messy, might not be perfect, but you're gonna have some more data to try and test and iterate. I love that. That's great advice.
Thank you.
All right, Carrie, and we're rounding out here. So where can people find where you're up to? I'll put it in the show notes as well, but
Cool. Yeah, carrieseverson.com. Everything lives there. Author Carrie Severson on Instagram. Come find me over there. Come say hi. Plenty of opportunities. Lots of downloads. carrieseverson.com has tons of burnout recovery downloads for you.
thank you so much. And thank you for being on the show today. We
Yeah.
so appreciate you. I'm so happy to have met you,
Thank you.
and we'll talk
Likewise.
to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye.